All right, so today we're going to kind of um, dive deep into a story, and it's a personal story, but it's one that kind of takes us through all these twists and turns of family relationship.
Wow.
Looking at this first-person account,
Hmm.
very raw and unfiltered, and it really highlights how complex family ties can be. It's a story about connection, about shifting dynamics, and ultimately how quickly things can change even within a family. So have you ever had a relationship with a family member take like a totally unexpected turn?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I
get ready because this one might hit close to home.
What I find really interesting about these personal accounts is how they offer like this really unique window into individual experiences.
Oh, for sure.
We're seeing the world through this one person's eyes.
Yeah,
And I think it reminds us that even within a family, everyone's carrying their own baggage, their own unique perspective.
absolutely. And this story begins with our narrator traveling to New York to visit her aunt.
Oh.
Almost immediately, she forms this really close bond with her cousin, who becomes kind of a confidant for her.
Right.
Someone she feels truly understands her.
Mm-hmm.
They just click,
Yeah.
that sense of acceptance.
Yeah.
It's so crucial, especially when you're young and trying to figure things out.
It really speaks to that deep human need for belonging.
Yeah.
That space where you feel seen and accepted for who you are.
Totally.
And it sounded like the narrator found that in her cousin, someone who offered like a different and maybe even a bit unconventional outlook on life.
Right, but then things get a little complicated.
Uh-oh.
During that same visit, there's this brief encounter with a male cousin.
Okay.
It's one of those situations that kind of blurs boundaries and leaves the narrator grappling with this mix of guilt and confusion.
Oh, wow.
What's striking is how the male cousin seems to just shrug it off.
Huh.
Well, it clearly has like a lasting impact on the narrator.
It's a great example of how trauma can manifest so differently in individuals. What might seem like a minor event to one person can leave like really deep emotional scars on another.
Right.
It makes you think about how we can better understand and support loved ones who are processing difficult experiences even years later.
So fast forward 12 years, and despite that complicated encounter, the narrator and her cousin have built this really strong, supportive bond.
Okay.
They talk often,
Mm-hmm.
and the cousin becomes kind of a rock for the narrator during a really tough period in her life.
Yeah.
She's in an abusive relationship.
This highlights how family relationships can be sources of incredible strength, especially during like times of crisis.
Totally.
The cousin becomes like a safe haven, someone the narrator can confide in and rely on without judgment.
Yeah.
It speaks to the power of empathy and the importance of having those anchors in our lives.
So the narrator eventually decides to leave that abusive relationship
Okay.
and seeks refuge with her cousin in the U.S.
Okay.
At first, things seem to be going well,
All right.
but then the cousin introduces her to this Jamaican friend. And well, let's just say this is where we see a real turning point in their relationship.
Interesting, the introduction of a new person, especially someone who becomes close to one party, can often shift the dynamic in a relationship.
Yeah.
Sometimes those shifts bring people closer, but in this case, it seems to trigger a cascade of unforeseen tensions.
It's palpable.
Yeah.
The narrator and this Jamaican man develop a genuine friendship.
Okay.
But almost overnight, the cousin's behavior changes.
Huh.
She becomes distant,
Ah.
critical,
Mm-hmm.
and she starts complaining about things that seem a bit nitpicky.
Like what?
Remember the whole air conditioner dilemma?
Oh, yeah, the cousin's accusations about the bathroom smell or the air conditioner.
Right.
While seemingly trivial, might actually point to a deeper resentment or insecurity that's bubbling beneath the surface. Could it be that she feels threatened by this new friendship, even if there's no romantic element to it?
That's a great point. It makes you wonder if there are other factors at play here, something we're not seeing. Perhaps the cousin had pre-existing anxieties about sharing her space or was struggling with her own personal challenges that we're not privy to.
Exactly. We only have the narrator's perspective.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that there's always another side to the story.
Oh, for sure.
Maybe the cousin felt overwhelmed by the changes in the household dynamic or was projecting her own insecurities onto the situation.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder what's going on beneath the surface, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about this like huge shift in behavior.
Right.
It seems to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's a classic example of how easily, like, unspoken anxieties can kind of poison a relationship,
Oh, totally.
Without open communication, those insecurities can just fester and then they manifest in these, like, really unexpected ways.
And things definitely escalate, like the complaints.
Oh,
They
right.
turn into like full-blown accusations. with the narrator being blamed for things like the bathroom smell.
Really?
Can you imagine?
Oh my gosh.
He creates this atmosphere where the narrator is constantly walking on eggshells,
Yeah.
never knowing what might set the cousin off.
It's like this is where those individual experiences we talked about earlier become like really important.
Right.
It's not just about the content of the arguments, it's about the emotional baggage that each person brings to the table.
Yeah.
The narrator, having just escaped this abusive relationship,
Right.
she's likely carrying a lot of unhealed wounds.
Oh, for sure.
And those wounds might be making her extra sensitive to any perceived rejection or criticism,
Right.
even if it's unintentional.
That's such a good point. She's likely seeking a safe haven, right?
Yeah,
a place to heal.
Exactly.
And instead finds herself in another emotionally charged situation.
It highlights how crucial it is to recognize and address those past traumas,
Yeah.
Without self-awareness and a willingness to seek support, it's incredibly difficult to break free from those unhealthy patterns.
And speaking of unhealthy patterns,
Yeah.
the story takes an even darker turn
Oh.
when the cousin accuses the narrator of child abuse.
Wow.
It all stems from this incident with the cousin's daughter,
Okay.
who has scoliosis.
This incident with the daughter brings another layer of complexity to the family dynamic.
Okay.
We don't know all the details, but it sounds like there was like a misinterpretation of events, perhaps even some intentional manipulation on the daughter's part.
It really underscores how quickly misunderstandings can spiral out of control, especially when there's already like this underlying tension and mistrust in the relationship.
Absolutely. The narrator, already reeling from the constant accusations, is now facing this like really serious allegation.
Right.
It's a classic example of how a lack of clear communication can lead to devastating consequences.
And sadly, it seems like any attempt at communication just falls apart at this point.
Oh, no.
The cousin, caught in her own narrative, refuses to listen to the narrator's side of the story.
This refusal to acknowledge different perspectives is often what leads to the irreparable breakdown of a relationship. It becomes a battle of my truth versus your truth, instead of a genuine effort to understand each other's experiences.
And ultimately, that's what happens. The relationship fractures completely.
Wow.
With the cousin demanding that the narrator leave.
It's a heart-wrenching turn of events, especially considering the close bond they once shared.
I know.
It's a tragic reminder that even the strongest connections can be severed when there's a lack of empathy, understanding, and a willingness to work through conflict.
The narrator is left to pick up the pieces, forced to seek shelter with her estranged sister.
Oh, wow.
It's such a stark contrast to the warmth and acceptance that she initially found with her cousin.
Right.
It really makes you think about the ripple effects of broken trust and the lasting impact of unresolved conflict.
And it brings up a really important point about setting boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes the healthiest choice is to distance ourselves from relationships that are detrimental to our well-being, even if those relationships are within our families.
That's a tough lesson to learn, but it's so important.
It is.
We can't control the actions of others, but we can control how we respond and how we choose to protect ourselves.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our own worth and understanding that we deserve to be treated with respect and kindness, even within our families.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that sometimes letting go even of a family bond can be like the most self-compassionate act,
Right.
It's not about giving up. It's about prioritizing our own emotional well-being.
This story really challenges that societal expectation of maintaining family ties at all costs.
Yeah.
It encourages us to step back and ask ourselves,
Right.
is this relationship serving me?
Yeah.
Is it allowing me to grow and thrive? And if the answer is no, then maybe it's time to redefine what family means to us.
This whole experience has been such a roller coaster for the narrator. We've seen her go from feeling deeply connected to feeling isolated and betrayed, even within her own family.
It's tough.
It makes you think about those recurring patterns of fractured relationships, especially with her mentioning seeking refuge with an estranged sister earlier.
Right. It speaks to the idea that family dynamics often run deeper than just the immediate situation,
Yeah.
There might be unresolved issues or past traumas that are influencing the current relationships. It reminds us that families are complex systems.
Right.
And sometimes those systems need to be reevaluated and restructured for the well-being of everyone involved.
So this deep dive has been really eye-opening.
Yeah.
I mean, we've explored the complexities of family dynamics, the impact of individual experiences, and the importance of setting boundaries to protect ourselves.
Right.
But for the listener out there, what do you think the key takeaway is here?
For me, it's the reminder that relationships, even familial ones, are constantly evolving.
Yeah.
Sometimes those changes can be painful and unexpected, but it's crucial to approach them with empathy, open communication, and a willingness to understand different perspectives.
Yeah.
If we don't nurture those connections, even the strongest bonds can fray, leaving behind hurt and regret.
It's like that saying, assumptions are the termites of relationship. We see how quickly assumptions and misinterpretations can escalate into conflict, especially when there's a lack of open dialogue.
Absolutely. And when those conflicts aren't addressed in a healthy way, they can create lasting damage.
Right.
The narrator's journey, while heartbreaking, ultimately highlights the importance of choosing our own path and surrounding ourselves with people who support our growth and well-being.
Well, this story's really stayed with me, and I imagine it sparked a lot of reflection for our listeners as well.
I hope so.
What stands out to you most from this deep dive? What does it make you think about your own relationships?
You know, this wasn't just one woman's story.
Right.
It was a reflection of the universal struggles we all face within our own families.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that those relationships, while precious, require constant nurturing and a willingness to learn and grow together. And sometimes that growth involves recognizing when a relationship is no longer serving us and having the courage to step away.
So as you navigate the complexities of your own family relationships, remember the importance of open communication, empathy, and setting boundaries.
Yeah.
And never underestimate the power of forgiveness, both for yourself and for others.
It's so important.
It might be the key to healing old wounds and building stronger, healthier connections.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Of course.
Until next time, keep exploring those intricate relationships that make us who we are.